Modern beer is marketed as sexy and masculine. But if beer is such a macho drink, then why does it contain the most potent estrogenic plant on earth? The hops in modern beer lowers testosterone, reduces sexual function and fertility, and is probably the main cause of the beer gut and man boob phenomenon that many beer drinkers have. Furthermore, estrogen is a powerful cause of dementia, stroke, heart disease, and cancer. The truth is that hops is not required to make beer, and before it was used, ancient beer recipes were incredibly medicinal. Hop-free ancient beer is mentally and sexually stimulating, and some ancient brews, which you will learn about in this presentation, can even raise testosterone. But in the 1500s, a law was passed that forced German beer makers to abandon their ancient recipes and begin producing modern cancer beer with hops in it. I've created this presentation to show you why you should never drink hopped beer again, and where you can get your hands on some of the same ancient recipe beer that sustained and enhanced the physical prowess, health, resilience, fertility, and lives of our ancestors.
Welcome to the End All Disease podcast, where it's all about doing your own research, making your own decisions, and speaking the truth without fear of the consequences. Here's your host, Mark Sloan.
Hello and welcome to this presentation, which I have titled The Hidden Dangers of Hops in Beer. So first we're going to start with modern beer ingredients. So there are many different types and styles of beer today, but the primary ingredients remain basically the same. You got your water, you got your barley, hops, and yeast. Now barley is a grain and it can be substituted, and it is in some beers, for things like wheat or rice or other grains. But these are your four basic beer making ingredients: water, barley, hops, and yeast. But it wasn't always that way. So we're going to look now at traditional beer ingredients. More than 100 different plants have been used traditionally in brewing beer. The most commonly brewed beer was called Gruit, spelled G-R-U-I-T. I used to think that was pronounced Gruit, but it's Gruit, as in Gruit. And it was, anyways, Gruit was highly medicinal as well as sexually and mentally stimulating. Then, in 1516, the German Beer Purity Act was passed, which dictated that hops, only hops, water, barley, and yeast could be used to make beer. So it was mandated by law that you have to use hops as in place of all these medicinal herbs that were once used. And in fact, the people did not accept this just wholeheartedly without a fight. They knew that hops was not good for them, but it was forced, and the rest is history. Now, most beers today are with hops in them. Basically, all the popular ones are. So now we're going to look at the physiological effects of hops in the body and why hops is so unbelievably unhealthy for you. German beer makers noticed long ago that the young women who picked hops in fields commonly experienced early menstrual periods. Eventually, researchers discovered the reason. Hops is perhaps one of the most powerfully estrogenic plants on earth, according to Stephen Herod Buhner in his book, The Natural Testosterone Plant. Today in England, it is well known that hops can powerfully inhibit men's sexual potency. Brewer's droop is a term devised for brewers who handle hops, as the estrogen is readily absorbed through their skin. Dr. Eugene Shippen wrote in his book called The Testosterone Syndrome that one of his patients who had been undergoing testosterone replacement therapy didn't respond to the treatment until he reduced his beer intake from 6 to 7 a night down to 1 or 2. So the hops in beer is so potently estrogenic and anti-androgenic that even while supplementing testosterone, the effects of that testosterone were completely negated by it. So it didn't work until he reduced that down to 1 or 2 beers. So that just goes to show you how potent of an anti-androgenic substance hops is. So a little more information about hops now. Hops belongs to the plant family Cannabaceae, which interestingly is the same family as cannabis. Now, I'm not saying that cannabis is estrogenic and should be thrown out with the bathwater, but I do think there are ways to make cannabis better, and there are ways to make it worse as far as its medicinal properties go. Anyone who's looked at cannabis research knows that it is a medicinal plant, no doubt about it. And in fact, we are going to do a presentation coming up on cannabis, and the goal of which will be to show you the constituents in it because it's not just cannabinoids that are medicinal. There's also flavonoids and terpenes. And so I'll show you everything in it that's medicinal. And the goal will be, going forward, as far as cannabis medicine goes, and in that presentation, to produce the most highly medicinal form of cannabis. Anyways, that is another topic for another day. This is why you want to subscribe to the End All Disease YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and you will get that whenever it comes out next. Anyway, more about hops. Just 100 grams of hops can contain as much as 300,000 IUs of estrogen. Unbelievable amounts. Just to compare that, vitamin D is also a hormone. Most people don't know that. But the RDA, or recommended daily allowance by the FDA, is 600 IUs. Contrast that with 300,000 IUs of estrogen. Now, to be fair, I don't think the RDA of the FDA on vitamin D is accurate. Apparently, about 10-15 minutes in the sun with most of your skin exposed, you'll get about 10,000 IUs of vitamin D, which tells me that's probably a lot closer to what we need. And that makes sense because, the companies that control the FDA, the pharmaceutical industry, they want people sick because that makes more customers for them. So for them to put out an RDA of vitamin D that's too low makes sense. It's a good idea. It's a good business move. Most of the estrogen in hops is of the ultra potent type called estradiol or estradiol. So here's a few mechanisms by which the estradiol or the estrogen in hops lowers testosterone. These are all taken from scientific studies. If you're listening, you can access these references and read them for yourself if you like. At the end of the show, I'll give you the show notes for that. Estradiol directly lowers testosterone in the testes. It increases SHBG, serum hormone binding globulin, which ends up binding up free testosterone in the bloodstream. So, estradiol lowers the testosterone in the testes and it binds the stuff that is in your bloodstream as well. So those are two mechanisms by which estradiol lowers testosterone. And here's another one. Estradiol has also been found to directly interfere with the ability of the testes Leydig cells to produce testosterone. Those are your testosterone producing cells, and it interferes directly with those cells' ability to produce testosterone. Another way, estrogen potently inhibits thyroid function. And there are many more ways testosterone is suppressed by the estradiol containing hops. Interestingly, there's another component of beer, not put in all beers, but many dark ales or malts for coloring and also for flavor. And that ingredient is often off-label. They don't put it in the ingredients list, but it's in there in many beers, especially the dark ones. And that is licorice. I like to try to pronounce the plant name, the official name. It's Glycyrrhiza glabra. That's licorice. And most people are unaware that licorice is commonly used in dark beers as a coloring agent to increase head, which is like the foam on top, and to add sweetness. Like hops, licorice is highly suppressive of androgen levels and hormone function. Licorice contains at least 7 estrogenic substances, 2 of which are actual estrogen in the form of cyclostrone and estriol. We know from scientific research that licorice increases cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Licorice also inhibits the enzyme 17-hydroxyprogesterone, which lowers the production of the androgen androstenedione. And because androstenedione is thereby converted into testosterone and DHT, the inhibition of 17-hydroxyprogesterone also lowers those hormones. So there are 3 very important male hormones that are suppressed by licorice. And thereby licorice directly affects sexual function and libido. So you've got your hops and you've got your licorice. Between the two, they are 2 very potent estrogen promoting, androgen reducing substances which make beer incredibly unhealthy, whether you're a man or a woman. Now we're going to look at estrogen, the effects of estrogen in the body real quick, just so you can understand its role and the damaging effects that it can cause. Conventional wisdom states that estrogen is a female hormone. In reality, estrogen is a mediator of stress that is intimately associated with all chronic degenerative diseases. The lies about estrogen, the idea that it's a female hormone, stem from drug companies selling estrogen replacement therapy. So their dogma and their ideology, which has no basis in science, is that as a woman ages, she progressively produces less and less estrogen. When in reality, the opposite is the case, and the same in men. As men get older, their testosterone lowers in proportion to the amount that their estrogen increases. So as men get older, estrogen increases. As women get older, estrogen increases. And when women hit menopause, it's because their estrogen to progesterone ratio becomes very imbalanced. Progesterone is the true female hormone. Estrogen is just a stress hormone. Progesterone will keep the estrogen at bay and will promote relaxation and health in the body, while estrogen will promote stress and disease. So we learned a lot about estrogen and the effects of it in the Women's Health Initiative study in the 90s. It's a famous study because it clearly revealed the effects of supplemental estrogen in women. So basically, for the study, researchers gave a large group of women ERT, which is estrogen replacement therapy, but they were forced to stop the trial early after participants began developing cardiovascular disease, stroke, dementia, and cancer. So whatever the source of estrogen, estrogen pushes the body in the direction towards developing these diseases and more. And this has been known. This has been known a long, long time. Hildegard of Bingen wrote in the 12th century, a long, long time ago. This is 1159 AC. Hops is not much use for a human being since it causes his melancholy to increase, gives him a sad mind, and makes his intestines heavy. So this was well known well before it was mandated to be used in beer. So it's not, you can't really make the argument that they wanted people to be healthy, so they mandated hops in beer. No. It was well known that hops was not healthy, and they still mandated it anyway. The question is why? Ask Stephen Herod Buhner, who wrote in his book, The Natural Testosterone Plan, and he will tell you, the presence of this highly estrogenic substance in beer is not an accident. So what do you think? Why do you think they would do that? Why do you think the government would come along and force brewers to put something that is highly toxic, damages fertility, health, and happiness in their beer? Well, here's my take on it. Healthy men with adequate testosterone stand up against the forces of evil in this world. They protect women and children from harm, have lots of babies, and solve problems. Apparently, the powers that be don't want that happening. The good news is, ancient hopless beer is alive and well and making a triumphant return. Prior to the German Beer Purity Act of 1516, which mandated the use of hops in brewing beer, the most commonly brewed beer was called Gruit. Gruit contained a mixture of yarrow, bog myrtle, and marsh rosemary. These herbs made the beer sexually and mentally stimulating, rather than making the drinker tired like hopped beers do. Many modern craft breweries and microbreweries are keeping the tradition alive and making men and women healthier by producing their own Gruit and other unhopped beers. Before I show you some of the incredible ancient brew recipes and where you can get them, let's look at what makes beer medicinal. Number 1. Medicinal herbs and plants. More than 100 different plants, as we spoke of earlier in this presentation, have been used traditionally in brewing beer. Plants used in brewing were chosen for their flavors and aromas, and also for their medicinal qualities. Number 2. Carbon dioxide. More important than oxygen, CO2 is vital for all living organisms. In the body, carbon dioxide acts as an antioxidant, a vasodilator, and is essential for oxygen use by cells via the Bohr effect. Much of the CO2 drank in beer, pop, or carbonated water is burped up, but the amount that is absorbed and retained will be of benefit. Number 3, brewer's yeast. Brewer's yeast is rich in B vitamins, and other vitamins as well. Although all beer is fermented using brewer's yeast, most brands remove the yeast before bottling and selling it. Buying beer that has been bottle conditioned means it was carbonated inside the bottle and contains live yeasts. Just look for a layer of yeast sediment on the bottom of the bottle. That's how you know it contains these live yeasts and lots of B vitamins. Gently swirl the beer inside the bottle to mix it before drinking. Now here we go, this is the exciting part. Ancient unhopped beers thriving. So we're going to go over 3 different types of beers that are traditional and very, very healthy for you. And I'm going to actually put on the screen, if you're watching this, you're seeing, what is this, 8 bottles from 8 different companies who produce Gruit, which is very exciting. So you can actually see the products that are being produced by craft modern breweries, bringing back these traditional healing brew recipes. So a little bit on Gruit first. Gruit ales are beers charged with botanicals rather than hops. Gruit contains grains, lots of honey and fruit, and a mixture of yarrow, bog myrtle, and marsh rosemary. These herbs make the beer sexually and mentally stimulating rather than making you tired like hopped beers. So lots of very interesting looking beers. I would love to try all of these. One of them is called Lamb's Wool. That's by a company called Bose, which is in Ontario, Canada, where I live. I would love to try them. They're about 7 hours away though. Another one is it's called Red Duck. Another one's called Salt Spring. I believe that is out of BC, Canada. Anyway, lots of very interesting bottles that I think you'll love to look at. If you're listening to the podcast, at the end of this show, I highly recommend you check out the show notes because I'll have all these beers lined up for you to look at. I'll give you the link to that at the end of this show. So the next fascinating type of ancient beer that we haven't even talked about yet is spruce beer. Beers made with spruce tips have a long history in brewing. Vikings brewed and drank spruce beer to ward off scurvy on long voyages. Scottish brewer the Williams brothers is bringing back the traditional non-hopped ales of Europe and especially Scotland. Pine is another tree in the conifer family, like spruce. The Williams brothers' traditional pine ale, made from the Scotch pine Pinus sylvestris, contains pine pollen, which actually contains bioidentical testosterone. So that will make you stronger, leaner, and more manly. It'll deepen your voice. How incredible is that? You can drink a beer and get healthy at the same time. Next type of beer is even more fascinating than this. I know you're going to love this one. This is called Sahti, S-A-H-T-I. And Sahti is a traditional Finnish beer, which is spiced with juniper berries and twigs. Before the days of steel kettles, brewers would put blazing hot river rocks into wooden barrels to heat and caramelize the bits of mashed herbs, which would infuse the flavors before fermentation. The result is an ancient brew, that's very healthy called Sahti. And on the screen, we've got a number of brews as well, a number of bottles of these beers from various companies. One's called Axholm Brewing Company. One Sahti here is called Sahti Claus. It's got a very interesting image on the bottle. Another company is called Mata. Norse Legend from Sam Adams. They make a Sahti beer. And finally, Finlandia makes a fantastic looking Sahti with a great looking bottle with a moose head on there. So, very interesting to note, every February 1st is International Gruit Day. So this is something you should be celebrating every year. But that's not the only day you should be drinking Gruit, I think. I think you should have these maybe every day. That'd be fantastic. That would really change things quicker, as opposed to just buying it once a year. But since 2013, craft brewers have banded together to raise awareness about Gruit and other ancient brews, declaring February 1st International Gruit Day. So one of the things I did looking for these ancient brews is I phoned around to around 12 craft breweries in town. To be honest, almost nobody knew about the dangers of hops. Almost nobody knew that hops wasn't traditionally used in beer. They knew about Gruits, but they didn't really understand it. So I phoned 12 different breweries, basically gave them some education, told them I read a book called The Natural Testosterone Plan by Stephen Herod Buhner. It's a great book. And I told them what I learned, that hops is highly estrogenic. It's the reason why men are getting these man boobs, and I think it's disrupting fertility and causing all kinds of problems. So when I actually did call around, there was only one brewery in town that had these hop-free beer. So the interesting to note is every February, every single craft brewery will have its own version of Gruit. So if you're having a difficult time finding it, then just wait till February. But it's important that you also call them and let them know that you're interested in this stuff, to let them know there's a demand for it, that you would buy it if they had it, kind of thing. But we'll get to that soon. Another thing I'm going to do, because when I bought this beer, they were pretty expensive. They're like $8 a beer. But I want to support the company. It was called Short Finger Brewery here in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. Fantastic brew company. They also have a brew it yourself there. So I spent $100. I bought 12 of their hop-free beers, because I want to support the company and let them know that there is a demand for this. But I also asked them about the brew it yourself, and they said, yeah, you can put whatever you want in the brew it yourself. So amazingly, Buck of Beer is back because you can get 150 beer for $150 you get literally 6 cases. So you go in, you put all your ingredients into the machine, they take care of the fermentation, or I guess nature does its thing. And then you go back and you fill your bottles. So there's a bit of work, but it's fun. I'm doing it with some buddies. and it's unbelievably inexpensive. So if you can't find any Gruit at your local craft breweries, I mean, if you can, buy it from them, but if you can't, brew it yourself. And of course, every February, celebrate International Gruit Day. Visit one of your local craft breweries and pick yourself up some Gruit to celebrate and honor the rich history of healthy, unhopped beer. The future is hopless. There's no reason why any person should ever consume hops. It tastes foul, smells like pee during brewing, and depending on how many hop beers one drinks, it can be a major contributor to infertility, sexual dysfunction, and disease. It's time to revolutionize the international beer industry by phasing out toxic hopped-based beers and replacing them with Gruit and other unhopped beers like Sati and Spruce and Pine beers. Now, we do this not by begging governments to create new laws, but by leveraging market demand by changing what we purchase. Our vote in the marketplace is infinitely more powerful at catalyzing change in this world than a vote for government. For most breweries at the moment, it's not profitable to produce Gruit and other unhopped beers full-time because the demand for them is low. Your job and mine now is to create enough awareness and demand for these ancient brews that they conquer shelves and replace hop beers. By buying and drinking healthy ancient brews instead of hop-based brews, together we will get healthier, smarter, stronger, transform the worldwide beer industry, and make the world a better place. Now, we've got a call to action. This is something that we all need to do to accelerate this process. This could make it lightning fast. If we all do this, we will see hop beers go bye-bye, and we will see all the healthy beers return very, very quickly. So here's the call to action. We've got 3 things. Number 1, share this presentation on social media to raise awareness of the health consequences of hops, as well as the remarkable health benefits of ancient herbal unhopped beers like Gruit, Sati, and Spruce beer. Number 2, email this presentation to every craft brewery in your town to educate them about the dangers of hops and the potent medicinal effects of unhopped beer, because many at this point are still unaware. Number 3, phone all your local craft breweries. So go to Google, look up craft brewery, and then put your city name and make a list of them. Make a list of all of them with the phone numbers, and then the next day, phone them all. Phone every single one of them. Ask, do you have Gruit or any other unhopped beers in stock? I'm interested in buying a lot of them. And do that to every single craft brewery in your area until you find one that does. And buy it and drink it often and responsibly. Buy a 12-pack as a gift for your friends and family, or brew your own at your local brew-it-yourself brewery. If we do all these 3 things, we will see very quickly the world of beer will change. And that is exactly what we're going to see when we make this video presentation viral. Cheers to your health. And if you enjoyed this presentation, please share it with everyone that you love. For the show notes and to sign up to our mailing list, go to EndAllDisease.com/episode 16. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope it changed the way you think of beer. And I hope it makes you excited to try and to continue the traditions that were once laid down by our ancestors, and to bring back and return healthy, healing beer into our lives to increase our sociability, increase our bonds and friendships and family bonds, as well as our sexuality, reproductive rates, and make the world better, more exciting, and healthier. So to your health. Thank you again for watching. I'm Mark from EndAllDisease, and we will see you in the next presentation.